Good evening, everybody. It's October 22nd, 2025. We have a special ACONA meeting. And for the first time, we're partnering with Altagether. Hopefully doing some good work here tonight to get some clarity on SCE undergrounding. We've got some great guests, so I'm not going to delay, and we're going to dive right in. Just some housekeeping. If you're looking to, first of all, the session is being recorded, and that recording will be made available. It'll be sent to all attendees and others who registered. It'll also appear, I imagine, on the Altagether website as well as the ACONA website. If you're looking to make comment, here's how you submit a question tonight. If you're on a mobile or computer, you can see the box at the bottom of those. That's where you will find a Q&A button. You can see that closer up. That's how you submit your questions tonight. If you don't see it, press the More button and you'll have other choices where you will find it. Thank you, John Mayo, our partner with Altagether. Wave at the people, please. Thank you. I'm with some more Altagether team, and I'm with some great county, state, and SCE officials. So we're going to dive right in. And first, I'm going to introduce Rachel Silsby from SCE. Rachel, would you mind, or Rochelle, sorry, would you mind introducing your team for me?
Of course. Thank you so much, ACONA and Altagether, for hosting Edison today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to hear from us. Hopefully the information we'll have for you here today will be helpful in the various rebuilding plans that everyone has. My name is Rochelle Silsby, and I'm a Principal Manager of Public Affairs for Southern California Edison. Joining me is Al Diaz, and he's our district manager in the area and also in charge of our rebuild. Al, can you introduce yourself as well?
Good afternoon, everybody. As Rochelle said, my name is Albert Diaz. I am the manager responsible for the rebuild in Altadena.
Great. And then can we have Vanessa?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Cardenas, and I am the project manager for the land rights acquisitions for the Eaton Fire.
Thanks, Vanessa. And can we have Lisa?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you again for giving us an opportunity to be here with you this evening. Lisa Woon, I'm with the External Affairs team here with SCE. I've been working on the rebuild efforts since the early February, and I'm also assigned to a special task force that works on wildfire efforts for the company.
Dave.
I'm Dave Ford. I'm the Government Relations Manager responsible for LA County. And glad to be here. And thank you, Nick, for facilitating this meeting for us.
And Valerie.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Sorry I'm having trouble with my camera this evening, but I'm Valerie Hernandez from Local Public Affairs, Southern California Edison. I'm a principal manager there focused on community engagement.
And I also see Thomas is joining us today as well. We have a good contingent from Edison here today.
Hi, everyone. Thomas Wong with Southern California Edison, our local public affairs team.
I think that's it for us.
Thank you, Rochelle and team. We'll go into your presentation. Before we do, I just wanted to explain to those watching. The forum tonight will include short presentations by our guests, followed by a moderated discussion. And then the bulk of the evening will open up to that Q&A period. Again, to find that, you go to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, whether on mobile or computer. With that, Rochelle, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that screen. And actually, I will be kicking off to Al, who's going to be going through this presentation for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. So if we can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Let's go one more over, please. So currently, Southern California Edison is working on undergrounding approximately 63 miles of the electrical distribution system here in Altadena as part of our major rebuild here. Approximately 40 miles are in high fire area, and approximately 23 miles are in non-high fire areas that were completely devastated in which we did not build back our infrastructure after the Eaton Fire. Actively, we currently have about 2.7 miles of active construction taking place, predominantly in the area of East Loma Alta Drive and Sunny Slope. There's an additional 4.7 miles of active construction that are going to be starting within the next 3 to 4 weeks. The reason we did start up on Loma Alta was that area pre-fire was already scoped to be undergrounded. So we already were ahead with some of the designs and some of the requirements needed in order to start the undergrounding process. In addition, there are about 19 circuit miles that are currently under evaluation, an additional 19 circuit miles that are currently under evaluation to also be undergrounded. After the fire, we used to have a 4 kV and a 16 kV system here in Altadena. After the fire, we eliminated our 4 kV system, and now it's all 16 kV. The 16 kV system is a lot better because it can accommodate all of the additional loads that we're seeing in homes nowadays, where it's your solar systems, your electric vehicles, and it really is a lot better on the 4 kV system. We used to have voltage issues during the summer. With the 16,000 volt system, it's a lot better. We don't have any voltage issues. Part of this undergrounding system also includes adding a lot more automated switches, fault detection equipment. All of these items will help us minimize, not only minimize the outage size, but also help us restore power a lot faster when power does go out. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So this right here is our map of our currently proposed 63 miles of undergrounding in Altadena. This map can be found in the Altadena page within SCE, and we can share that link with Nick, and he can send it to everybody after this call. But this will give you an idea of where we're undergrounding in Altadena. If we can go to the next slide, please. Some of the benefits of undergrounding are once we are able to underground everything that we're trying to underground, it's going to help reduce PSPS, which is the public safety power shutoffs. So an underground system is less susceptible to the PSPS. In addition, I know that the trees are the community here really loves our trees here. One of the things is we won't have to be doing any more tree trimming like we did in the past. And it also does improve the aesthetics of the area, not having the overhead lines. So this, what you're seeing in the screen right now, this is a typical design that you will see in your neighborhoods if your neighborhood is being undergrounded. Some of the things that you're going to see are pad-mounted transformers, underground. You won't see the underground conduit, but there'll be underground conduit. You're going to see vaults, handholds, and stub outs for service lines. So here on this map, every home will have a stub out, and what a stub out is basically a location for you to connect to the underground distribution system, and there'll be one at every single property line. Handholds are going to be something that's going to be very commonly seen throughout the system. If we go to the next slide, I can show you a picture of a handhole. So on the right side, that's a handhole, and like I said, it's a small underground access point for us to be able to connect your home to the underground system. It's usually about 17 inches by 30 inches. It's flush to the ground, no different than a lot of people are familiar with, like your water meter. It's no different than that. And it's really minimal impact. Typically, you'll find this within the right of way of the street. And then on the left side, that is a pad-mounted transformer. So we will also have pad-mounted transformers. These are ground level transformers that replace the ones that you typically would see on an overhead pole. They're enclosed and locked. They're weather resistant, so they are safe. They are safe to be out in the public. Typically, you'll see one of these transformers. It's one for about every 8 to 10 homes. And again, this is what powers your home. The transformer brings the voltage down from 16,000 volts to 12240, which is what a residential home, the voltage a residential home uses. If we can go to, or actually, I'm sorry, on the service stub out that I was discussing earlier. So the service stub out is to your property line, and there is still, you will need to, the homeowner is responsible for trenching from the stub out to the panel, which we estimate is about $8,000 to $10,000. This estimate was based on using an SCE union contractor. It doesn't include additional costs such as landscaping and concrete repair. It's very likely, though, that if a customer hires their own contractor, they can probably get it done for less than the $8,000 to $10,000. One of the things that the county has actually been very actively pursuing is a funding opportunity in collaboration with Cal OES to secure some FEMA funding to be able to help residents or customers with the cost of going from the stub out to the panel. If we can go to the next slide now. So I know one of the big questions that a lot of residents have been asking is, what about the homes that are still standing? Will we have to cut over? Will we not have a source? So you will have a source, and we do have a solution in the interim until the customer is able to underground from the stub to the panel. We will, on the screen here, what you're seeing is, so the handhole is located in front of the pole. There'll be a service pole, typically between 25 and 35 foot pole. And what we'll do is we'll rise up that pole to feed your existing weatherhead. So you'll still have power. You'll continue to have power. You won't go without power even after we underground your area or your neighborhood. And now I will hand it over to Vanessa with the land acquisitions team.
Thanks, Albert. Hi, everyone. Can we go to the next slide, please? So as I was saying before, I am project managing the land rights acquisitions for the Eaton Fire rebuild effort. What my team does is once the planning team or planning and operations have designed a circuit, that work order map or that map comes over to my team, and we verify the impact of the circuit to the property. We research ownership. And then after that, we begin to engage property owners via call, text message, email, mail, a door knock if that's possible. And we try every method that we can to get in touch with the property owner. Once we begin conversations with them, we'll deliver to them the right of entry agreement that will show the design of what we're proposing to install on their property. We will be only approaching property owners where we are looking to acquire easement rights over private property. But I'm jumping ahead, I apologize. So what we do in initial stages is prepare the necessary documentation to deliver to the property owner. Next slide, please. So what I had touched on a little bit earlier is the right of entry agreement. We developed the right of entry agreement as a way to fast track scheduling and construction, which is extremely important, especially for the fire rebuild effort. An easement, which is the final right that gives us the ability to have our equipment in place over private property, that takes approximately 6 months to prepare and have that documentation ready. So the right of entry allows us, it's much quicker for us to get that ready, and it allows us to construct, operate, and maintain the facilities that we construct on a property while we work on getting the easement ready. When we present an owner with an ROE, we are shooting for a 30-day timeline to achieve signatures, answer any questions that we can. In order to do that, we'll try to schedule a site visit, review the design that we're proposing over a property, and answer any questions that the customer might have in relation to the design, to the agreement, just whatever we can do to make the property owner feel comfortable with every step of the process. For the ROE, we offer a $500 compensation at the signing of the ROE, and then there'll also be an additional compensation that's offered at the time of easement signing. It is important to note that we do need 100% participation of the affected property owners for each project so that we can move forward with construction. Next slide, please. This is an ROE exhibit example. This is something that it's typical that we would provide with the right of entry agreement. So what we do is we use the yellow line that surrounds the parcel that will indicate a property owner's property lines. The pink crosshatched area is the easement area that we're asking for, and the light blue or teal color of the equipment, that's the equipment that we're planning to, or that we would like to install. So this will be typical as far as what we would include in an ROE packet. And I know Albert had showed an example of the pad mount, but this is an example also showing here of the pad mount of what we would try to be installing in that location. Next slide, please. So I like to highlight what the ROE, the nitty gritty of the ROE and what it really gets down to. So for us, it helps to facilitate the Altadena rebuilding effort. It's ensuring that we can provide electric service with improved safety and reliability. It's a short document, it's 3 pages. It includes that easy to understand exhibit that we just went over and shows you how your property would be affected. It grants SCE access and authorization to construct, maintain, and operate facilities on the property. The right of entry agreement is a temporary right. So once the easement is signed, that right of entry essentially would go away and the easement would stay in place and be recorded against your property. As mentioned before, there are 2 opportunities for compensation. One would be at the ROE signing and one at the easement signing. I'd like to just highlight that signing an ROE does not waive or release the property owner's right to file a claim against SCE. Signing an ROE indicates that the property owner is agreeing to signing a future easement. Site meetings can be scheduled per property, and we use that time to focus on each property owner's needs, their questions on design, and their impacts to their property. We prefer to not hold group meetings just so we can focus on property owners one at a time. I also wanted to mention that my acquisitions group is supported by our contractor, and that's Monument Right-of-Way Group. Next slide, please. I will pass it over. Is this back to you, Albert?
I think that was the end of our presentation. I think we handed back over to Nick.
And we just wanted to, of course, share these important building resources for the community. I feel like we can't reiterate this one enough. I know a number of folks have been able to go in person to the recovery center as well as contact us over the phone, just understanding that this particular phone line is particularly for rebuilding and recovery. So it's a dedicated customer service line that's available 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Fridays, or Saturdays through 8 to 5. And again, just wanted to be sure that this information was available to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle, and your team. And we'll be getting to our discussion in a moment. I'm going to turn over to Kara Barnett with LA County Public Works.
Great. Thanks very much, Nick. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. And I do apologize. I'm having technical difficulties with my camera. But my name is Kira Barnett, and I'm an Assistant Deputy Director at the Los Angeles County Public Works, leading recovery efforts. And with me tonight is Alicia Ramos on my team. Public Works is working with all utilities to facilitate undergrounding, and I'm here to share some information about permitting processes related to undergrounding. So if we could go to the next slide, please. For all fire rebuilds, it's important that you engage Southern California Edison during the plan review process. SCE are involved with where and how power will be provided to your property. There are areas, as discussed tonight, for which area undergrounding is planned. And whether you're rebuilding, replacing an electrical panel on an existing home, or adding a service panel, if your home is in an area where undergrounding is planned, there are steps you can take now to prepare for future undergrounding. Preparing now can save you significant time and expense once SCE begin undergrounding in your area. We've created a guide to help you prepare for this upcoming effort, which can be found at recovery.lacounty.gov/rebuilding/rebuild-policies, as seen on the right of your screen. And if we could go to the next slide, please. First, it will be imperative that you install an adaptable panel that can be served overhead now and later be converted to be served by underground power. These adaptable panels cost the same as traditional panels and will prepare you to continue to receive power for the life of the panel. Second, to prepare to connect underground, you will need to install underground conduit from the service panel to the utility designated service point. Working with SCE, they'll help you to identify the location of the designated service point. And working with Edison will be the best way to stay informed on how to prepare your site now and for the future. So during the rebuilding review process, a service request number from Southern California Edison is required for all rebuilds, new accessory dwelling units, new panels, and for temporary power. Edison will need preliminary documentation to initiate their clearance and issue a service request number. And that documentation includes a preliminary site plan, the proposed meter location, estimated loads if those are available, the service voltage, and the panel size. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So you can apply online at sce.com/partners. And should you need additional support, you can visit Southern California Edison representatives, as they mentioned, at the Altadena One-Stop Permit Center, or access resources through Edison's targeted underground website, which can be found by visiting sce.com/tug. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Kara. And then I do have a representative from CPUC. Hope and Nora are here. Hope, would you like to say anything, or Nora?
Hi, thank you for having me tonight. I just wanted to briefly introduce myself. I am Hope Chrisman. I'm the local government liaison with the California Public Utilities Commission, managing the Los Angeles County areas and Altadena specifically. With me tonight, I also have my colleague, Nora Gutierrez. Nora wants to say hello.
Nora, we're not getting your volume.
Oops. My apologies. I had the master volume off. Hi, good afternoon or good evening. My name is Nora Gutierrez, and I work closely with Hope. I cover also the LA County region, specifically districts 1, 2, and 4, as well as the South Bay and East LA area. So thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you, all our guests. It's great to have you and everybody listening in. I just want to take a moment to kind of take a breath and realize, kind of listening to everything, where we're at and what a surreal moment it is for us as residents. So we certainly appreciate the opportunity for clarity from our guests. And I do recognize that those visiting, those listening in, are in different stages of grief and trauma. And as we hope to rebuild, I hope that those that are here tonight presenting to us will continue this communication, because that's going to be important moving forward. Also next to me is Morgan Whirlridge. Morgan,
almost.
Whirlidge?
Whirlidge, you got it.
Whirlidge. Morgan is a resident, also a fire survivor. Like myself, Morgan lost everything in the fires and is a strong member of Altagether and a Black Captain.
That's correct, yes.
Anything I miss?
I think you got it, including the last name. Congratulations.
All right. Well, eventually. So I just want to dive right in. We've got some questions. So I'm going to start with some follow-up questions to our panel. And if it's possible, can you take us back to a gallery view, John, so I can see who looks like they're ready to take on a question? I'm going to follow up right with SCE and everybody. I'm going to share the slides you've shared tonight. Those will be along with the recording and with the slide, the link that was mentioned, the proposed undergrounding link. I'll include that on our websites, and we'll probably send that out to participants as well if we are able. Let's dive right in. Which FEMA grant is the county and Cal OES pursuing?
This is Alicia Ramos with LA County, and I can go ahead and give an answer to that. Los Angeles County Public Works, in conjunction with SCE, they're supporting us strongly in this effort. We are pursuing the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which we are working with members of Cal OES to get that application in, which will subsequently be submitted to the federal government. FEMA will be the one to ultimately review the final application, and we hope for the award of the grant.
Thank you, Alicia. And I think it was first mentioned by SCE. Are you all working in coordination with that?
Yes. So SCE has helped us in terms of in the grant application. We've got to do up a large-scale estimation of how many homes are impacted, both homes that have been destroyed from the fire, damaged from the fire, and those standing that are along the new undergrounded routes. All of those households, we are working with SCE to identify them, make sure that when we capture the ask of the large-scale grant funding amount, we want to make sure that we capture money that will cover all those eligible homes.
Great. I appreciate that answer, and I'll see if anybody wants to add anything. But before I do, let's expand on it. As you know, those funds can be limited. So I appreciate you saying, making sure that it covers all those eligible homes. In the case that it might not, it might cover part of the undergrounding plan. Is there a part of Altadena that you plan to prioritize or a level of destruction?
So from the county's perspective of how we're forming the grant ask, we are not necessarily prioritizing. We're really looking at all the households along the SCE undergrounded routes will all be impacted to some extent. Whether or not you're going through construction or you're living in your home still, you will be impacted by the undergrounding of the new routes. So there is not necessarily a prioritization in terms of tiers. In the grant, you will see a narrative that identifies the unique circumstances of each of those categories, and we explain why they're eligible or why we would consider them impacted by the work of the undergrounding.
And I have a follow-up question as well. Thank you. So just to clarify, so that hazard mitigation funding, that's going to be used only as it pertains to the connection from the homeowner on their private property to the undergrounding infrastructure, or will that be used as well for the cost of the undergrounding infrastructure that's being put in?
So it will only pertain to the individual parcel household homeowner that is making that connection. SCE is funding their portion of undergrounding the mains. The grant will only apply to that connection from the individual parcel to the connect point, which Albert identified earlier.
Thank you, Alicia. Did any of our other panelists have anything to add to that? All right, we'll move on to the next question.
Okay, next question is, residents are being asked to make major rebuild and financial decisions without clear information. When will all parties provide a coordinated and publicly accessible timeline, including maps, trenching plans, permit requirements, interim power provisions, and ordinance milestones so homeowners can plan with certainty and avoid redesigns or unexpected conditions later?
Morgan, I think I'll take that one. This is Valerie from SCE. Thank you for that question. So we have tentative undergrounding maps are available on the website. I'm going to drop those links into the chat. I saw some questions around where the map is located. So they're on SCE.com, our TUG site, but there's also a specific Altadena specific site that I want to make sure that you all are linked to. So I'll drop that in the chat. But as detailed plans of the infrastructure actually become more available, we'll continue to provide those updates to the impacted customers. And then customers are always welcome to reach out to our dedicated customer support. We've got a phone line set up that is specific to our Altadena residents, But we also, don't forget, we have our one-stop shop in Altadena, and then soon we'll have an Altadena Rebuild Community Hub site, which will open up in about a month or so. And so they're always welcome to go and speak with planners, some of our energy advisors, which are customer service representatives, to gather more information. So as we continue to have more information, we'll make sure that those residents are updated. And I'm going to drop those chats to those links that I said where it shows the map and some detailed information into the chat now.
Thank you so much. And just a follow-up question maybe for Public Works. I know that during the process of getting a permit, you're asked for a service request for SCE. So that was kind of explained, but is there any information that's currently posted online that clearly states where and what you need to do in order to get that permit once you're through the process of regional planning?
Yes, absolutely. Once the full building plans are submitted, we provide an agency referral sheet that lets applicants know what actions they need to take. And that includes the Edison referral and how to connect with Edison to get that service request number, along with the water will serve letter and some other agency clearances that are required. So an agency referral, there's a sample on our website at recovery.lacounty.gov, and then we'll provide one specific to your project upon submittal.
Thank you, Kira.
Thanks.
If anybody has anything to add, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next.
Yeah, if I could, this is Alicia Ramos with Public Works. Kira, I want to add on to this question is generally about timeline and scheduling. And so I want to add information there to the extent we know it about the grant request. So again, this grant is currently being applied for. So all of this is with the caveat that, of course, if it's approved, if it's awarded to us, then we look at a timeline that right now suggests that funding for those connection points, and again, this is only from the individual parcel to the connection point of the SCE terminus on your lot. We are looking at right now, Cal OES is telling us after they go through the application and then FEMA reviews for approval, we are likely looking at an award date that is somewhere late 2026. So I want to put that out there to let folks know how that could impact the funding component, and also give a heads up as to the criteria. And this is going to affect different people differently depending on where you're at in the SCE undergrounding phasing of the work. Only after award will those constructions be eligible for the funding. So let me just paint two situations. If you were to, I don't think anybody necessarily is ready for a connection at this point, but if you were to construct that connection at this point prior to the award, it would not be eligible. Once the award, and again, cross our fingers, everything goes well with it. If the county is awarded that grant, once it's awarded, then construction activities after award would be eligible. So I just want to put that out there for consideration in how you strategize your particular situation.
Thank you very much, Alicia. So speaking of strategy, and I appreciate the optimism of the grant happening, but in the case that the FEMA grant doesn't happen or doesn't cover all costs, how would the county help pay for this?
So in the event that we don't get the award, which hopefully that's not the case that we're talking about, this would go down the general process that SCE would have for undergrounding, regardless of what situation it is or what area it's in. Typically, and I invite the SCE folks to join in if I've mentioned anything that's inaccurate. But typically when an undergrounding is done, if it's a new community, the developer would pick that up. This is obviously not the case. So if they undergrounded in an area where we already have development, it would be the individual homes that I understand. But I'm also putting this information out there, one, to have SCE back check me on that. This is what we've talked about in our grant application, but also to put out that if we're not awarded the grant, that there is not necessarily a plan B per se in that grant. So we are very optimistic that that grant will be looked at. We understand through the state and the federal government that this is being looked at with high priority. But again, we can't put out that there's any guarantees at this point.
Thank you, Alicia. I have a follow-up to that. I understand that as part of the and maybe this is more for CPUC as well, but I understand that as part of CPUC's regulations on undergrounding and specifically Rule 20, there were work credits that were set aside for undergrounding. And I'm wondering if, assuming that the FEMA grant does fall through, and let's hope it doesn't, but assuming it does, are there other sources of funding that can be used? Say work credits from Rule 20 of the CPUC?
Yeah, let me speak to that first, and I welcome the SCE folks to join in, as you may be aware of other funding sources. One thing I want to acknowledge is the insurance component, and this will affect whether we get the grant or not. If your home is insured and that insurance coverage covers the connection, your power connection, then you're not eligible for the grant funding. There's no quote unquote double dipping, right? If your insurance company, and this is something that I would encourage folks to have those conversations with your insurance carriers to see what may pertain to you. For some policies, it depends. There's a number of different companies out there. It depends on how they define it, right? With some insurance carriers, if they're going to compensate you like for like, meaning you were connected overhead before, if you're not connecting overhead again, it may not be eligible, meaning your insurance company may say, you know, you're not doing it the same way. We don't cover that. Some insurance policies may say, look, power connection is essential. Whether you go overhead or underground, it's covered. So that's something that as an individual with your insurance company, you should be having those conversations to make sure you figure out which situation you're in. If you're covered by insurance, if your policy covers you for that connection, I want to reiterate, the grant, you would not be eligible for the grant. That would be quote unquote double dipping, right? So that's what I can speak to relative to what we've heard and what we discussed relative to the grant. But again, I open it up to the SCE folks or anyone else who may be aware of other funding sources.
Yeah, I'll step in here if you, thank you, Alicia. And again, I do want to echo thank you to LA Public Works and Cal OES for the partnership in pursuing this hazard mitigation grant program. Again, we're hearing from Cal OES, there's optimism and confidence that the funding will be secured. So again, I know the timeline is a little bit out there, but we're working diligently with LA County on helping to submit that application. So I just want to back up a little bit in terms of the service connection costs. Again, under SCE's approved tariff from the CPUC, which is the California Public Utilities Commission, homeowners bear the cost to connect the electrical service at the property line to their home. So this is what Al is referring to, Alicia, in terms of where we're going to be stubbing and then where, again, the line would connect to the electrical meter. Again, this is known as Rule 16. And again, it outlines the requirements for that service line extension. Again, these are the lines that connect from SCE's distribution lines to the customer's electrical meters. And this is necessary to provide the utility service. And again, per the PUC, the connection from SCE's underground distribution line, that's to the service to the electrical panel is responsible for the customer is responsible for that. So that's going to include the cost for trenching. That's going to be installing conduit underground, and then any wires that are connected to SCE's distribution line. So we know that homeowners have faced significant hardships, and that's why we are diligent about pursuing these alternative funding opportunities to fund this expense. Again, we have the Cal OES funding with FEMA, but we're also exploring ways to talk to our commission about how we can use certain allowances through Rule 16 to offset the cost for customers to be able to underground that service line. So again, it's something that we have to submit to our commission. It hasn't been done yet. We plan to do that by the end of the year. And again, it doesn't guarantee it because we do need to get permission for our commission, but we are going to be looking and exploring that. I think another thing that if you were on Monday's Supervisor Barger's community meeting, I know that the supervisor's office is looking at how that new funding district will allow to find some of that funding for the service line connection. So again, we were optimistic to hear that. We'll be talking to the supervisor's office a little bit more on that and how we can work through some of those details. Again, so hopefully that complements some of the things Alicia had provided and wanted to address some of those things.
Thank you, Lisa. I have a couple follow-ups, but was there anybody else that wanted to chime in before I throw those out there? Great. This is to anybody speaking on the same issue. Two quick questions. If someone is underinsured to the degree that it won't pay for the full 8 to 10,000, Alicia, is there some sort of plan in place are they completely ineligible or can they be eligible for that partial?
I think those are the areas of gray that we would certainly want to document as best we can. A good part of what is going to be required for the rebate program, and let me put some more structure to this. It would be a rebate program. So homeowners have the responsibility to connect to their service point, and that would be something that you would work with your contractor to put that in place. There will be application that you would submit. We will do workshops within Public Works, Building and Safety. We'll make sure that when you submit your plans, that part of that review process for approval of your plans will also be advising you of the program, making sure you've got all the clarity on documentation. We will host work sessions so that both contractors and homeowners can come to make sure that they are doing this work to connect in compliance so that there's no end of the road surprises, but you were complying with all the necessary documentation. That would be part of the documentation what we would want. If you're in a unique situation where you were underinsured, probably shouldn't even say unique, this may be a very prevalent situation. If you are underinsured, that we document how that is established so that we can get you hopefully recognized and eligible for funding. The point is to help fund this work because there is not funding for it. You'd want to make sure that you can document that your homeowner insurance is either not covering it or somehow underinsured so that we can help you get the assistance you need.
I appreciate that. We're going to kind of bust through questions because we really want to get to the Q&As that are coming in, and they're coming in pretty fast and furious. But the last thing I'll ask, and Alicia, I'm not sure if you or someone else, and we're leaning heavy on you, so thank you. I know that I can tell you anybody that I say there's a rebate coming, they can't afford in this moment to cover it. So waiting until 2026 or a rebate coming in, is there any philanthropic or otherwise that anybody on the screen can recommend for someone who simply can't even afford to connect electric to their home and then wait for a rebate?
I think that's an extremely important question, and it's one that we are looking at with our Chief Executive Office. As part of the narrative we're submitting for the grant program, we are working with the Chief Executive Office to understand and identify how we can structure some component to this program that will identify some criteria for folks who simply cannot make that. There just isn't the out-of-pocket ability up front to carry the cost. Even though it is a rebate program, you are identifying something that we realize could be an obstacle, which is there just isn't the funding up front out of pocket. So we do not have that completely identified. Again, we're working with our CEO to make sure that our grant application is as complete as possible to demonstrate the different categories and concerns. So I just want to acknowledge that that concern has been brought up. We are looking to put some sort of structure or language within the narrative that can hopefully give us an avenue. It will probably be predicated, though, on, again, substantiating the inability to pay up front. So again, we're working on it, but until that grant is submitted, I can't speak any further to whether or not or how we've identified it or that it is identified.
Thank you. And I suppose before we leave this subject, and I don't know if we're going on to new ones, we'll see what comes in, but just as of recent, in a recent letter to Governor Newsom, SCE indicated that homeowners are responsible for trenching and undergrounding. This is what we've already covered. At an estimated cost of 8 to 10,000 to reconnect. This estimate does not include additional expenses, especially for standing homes, which may face further costs related to relocating electrical panels, rerouting conduit, repairing driveways, landscaping, or other hardscape disrupted by the work. Is this correct? And please break down the estimated costs homeowners should expect to incur beyond what we've been speaking to.
So I'm not sure if the SCE team members want to speak to how the 8 and 10,000 was put together, but let me speak to how we are addressing it in the grant application. We recognize exactly what you've pointed out, Nick, or what this question points out, which is we've got different categories of situations. For those homes that are building from ground up, you're going to have a very different circumstance that you're constructing through than you are for an existing home that may be going, depending how your panel is located, is the straightest connection through a driveway, through landscape? What are those different materials? So as we put together our own cost estimate, we're trying to validate. Now, what SCE put out there, 8 to 10,000, was predicated on certain conditions, right? This is just a trench. This is just to put the line in. We're not indicating what kind of condition this cost would be encountering. So we are putting together a cost estimate with the help of some construction consultants to say, look, give us a more typical situation, starting with likely a standing existing home that will go through some type of material disturbance, demolition, and then reinstall. So we don't have that cost. We will be getting that probably in the next week, and we will see where our cost lines up. But we are anticipating that there's going to be additional costs on top of what we heard. And again, I open it to SCE if you want to elaborate.
Thanks, Alicia. I might turn it over to Albert. My understanding of this estimated $8,000 to $10,000 is that it was based on a 35-foot trench using 3-inch conduit, but it would also be using an SCE union contractor as well. So Albert, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there. And I think you're correct. So it's, again, assuming the 35-foot trench and 3-inch conduit using union labor. Albert, did I get that correct?
You got it right. Thanks, Rochelle.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to switch over. Did you want to cover the next one?
Sure. Okay. I know we have a lot of questions coming in, so we're just going to go to the next pre-written question here. Who will receive a right of entry request, and will SCE clarify before signing whether the ROE agreements authorize trenching, permanent equipment placement, or easement recorded on title?
The people receiving ROE requests are going to be the private properties that we have identified that require an easement. So there will be portions of our circuit that will be installed in public right of way or within the street. So we would not need to approach some property owners for those rights. And I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
So who will receive right of entry request? I think you clarified that it's folks who are on private streets. I guess I can ask a clarifying question there as well. So if you are on a public road and SCE is in the public right of way, are you setting your pad mounted transformers on private property, and then would folks that are on a public road possibly be receiving an ROE for those?
So sorry, the question's a little bit confusing. So if we are installing equipment within the public right of way and a piece of equipment happens to where we need to place it, like for a transformer, if there might be a portion of the transformer that's going onto private property, but there's also a part of it that's in the public street, we would still be approaching the property owner where a portion of that equipment is on their property and requesting an easement right for that.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Because in the photos that you showed, you have a pad-mounted transformer sort of next to a mailbox that's clearly on someone's private property. So that's what I was clarifying, because it looks like your trenches are in the public right of way.
Yes, I think we try as much as possible to avoid private properties to impact homeowners' areas as the least amount that we can. But where we have less space and we need to try and we need to ask for areas, sometimes maybe the area might be split between public right of way and private property. And in some cases, like you mentioned, there's a lot of private streets within Altadena. So we need to request easements over the private street.
Okay. And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, so you mentioned that there's a $500 compensation for signing the ROE. And then you mentioned that there's also compensation for the easements that are taken. How are you determining the compensation for the easements?
So the easement compensation will be based on sales comparables that are composed of land values that are taken from both before and after the fires. There's a percentage of value that's assigned to the easement area that takes existing factors of that area into consideration to help determine the percentage. So factors that affect that percentage is what is that easement area used for? So is it a private street? Is it a setback area on the home? Is it along a driveway or within a buildable area? We take all of those, or all those factors are taken into consideration when we're looking at the easement value. Where we try to choose the areas to be the least impactful as possible to the property owners, and definitely avoid any buildable area or where the future home's footprint might be. So we're trying to stay within the private road where normally you would just be driving over, or maybe if it's private road that you walk across, you're just walking over. We don't want to impact people where they might have plans to rebuild something specific. So from there, when we use these values, we make an offer to the property owner based on the sales comparables that we have pulled. And it's determined off of the square footage that the easement is using.
And then if a homeowner is refusing to sign an ROE, then do you have a mechanism to compel the homeowner or to take an easement on the homeowner's property in order to complete your project?
So if they're refusing an ROE, that's when we have to take it back to the project team and review that property and how it fits into the entire plan. Because certain properties might affect the project differently. If we're at the beginning or at the end of the line, it might have a different impact than, as I'm sure you could imagine, in the middle of a block. If we're trenching down an entire block and the middle property does not want to sign an ROE, that's where we have to really take it back to the team and see what possibilities there might be, if redesign might be possible. But we really try to work with the property owner as much as possible to get them comfortable with the project so that we can move forward. Because ultimately, we're trying to support the community and build back stronger, safer, and we want to work together with everyone to make that happen.
Thank you. We're going to be working toward the community's questions shortly, and I'm not sure if you're receiving them, but I do want to point out we have both Fernando and Michael that were invited and are not presenters, but are panelists. Is there anything you wanted to add or a follow-up question, either you, Michael, or Fernando?
I have. Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate it. Fernando Villa here. I'm not an owner. I am not. I'm not impacted by the fires, and I very much am supportive of any measure that can be taken to alleviate the conditions of the homeowners and their ability to get their homes back, and the infrastructure put in place and to make them whole as soon as possible and as much as possible. So I just wanted to make that clear. I just had a handful of questions, and I'll try to be quick here because I know the audience must have many other questions as well. I want to focus a little bit on the process that SCE has undertaken to underground, which, by the way, I'm a big supporter of undergrounding. In my land use world, I'm a real estate land use and environmental lawyer. Undergrounding is very much, as SCE knows better than just about anybody except other utilities, the trend that cities and CPUC and other agencies want to see undertaken for not only for fire safety, but other reasons, aesthetics, et cetera. So a handful of questions. One, I am curious, and perhaps I don't know if this should be directed to Lisa or Al or another of the team members of SCE, and really helpful presentation, by the way, by the team. But what has, and perhaps this has already been addressed, and I may have just missed it. What is prompting the acquisition program and, frankly, the undergrounding? And what is, what's initiated this? And maybe the answers are obvious. And what is its overall timeline for completion, if I may ask?
Fernando, can I get some clarification? So you're saying what is prompting the undergrounding, or are you asking about what's prompting the ROEs and easement requests?
Well, it maybe, yeah, let me be clear, and I apologize if I wasn't, Lisa. So no, it's what I'm saying is you have an overall undergrounding program, right? And that's and you're undergrounding 63 or so miles, which is terrific, by the way. But the ROE and the easement elements of it are just important facets, but only parts of that undergrounding program. So I guess what I'm getting at is, what was the catalyst, or what are the reasons for the undergrounding program? What is it? Why has SCE embarked upon that program?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think there was a lot of encouragement, obviously, by the state, folks like the governor's office who really wanted to see us building back resilient. And I think that we, obviously agreed with that as well. In addition, in our high wildfire areas, there's definitely a benefit to going underground, as well as installing additional wildfire mitigation measures to reduce the risk of ignition. And as well, in a lot of our newly constructed communities, there is undergrounding in a lot of the areas. Unfortunately, we are building back almost like new construction, right, where there's total rebuilds. So in those areas, we determined that it did make sense for us to do undergrounding in those areas. Does that help to answer your question? And Tina, feel free to chime in if I missed anything there.
I think you covered it, Rochelle. I think I maybe want to, Fernando, thank you for your comments and for your questions. Wanted to maybe address the timing issue, right? So again, in our governor's response letter, again, him asking for SCE's plans on our undergrounding effort, we did commit to 63 miles in Altadena. Now, the timing depends on a number of factors, right? We've made our commitment and we've been judicious about looking at our own internal processes to figure out how do we underground faster. Typically, undergrounding takes 2 to 3 years. In some of the areas you all know well, particularly on the gorge circuit, we've been able to complete some of that underground civil construction in a matter of months. So again, we're really looking at our own processes to make sure we're going and building faster and more resiliently, knowing we want to minimize the disruption to customers. It does rely on us to partner with many entities, LA County Public Works, the Department of Regional Planning, to get the right permits in place to make sure we're, again, minimizing the disruption to customers. So in terms of the timeline, I know Valerie had put in the chat, or as well in our presentation, we have a proposed undergrounding plan. Again, we've been able to identify project start years, both for 2025 and 2026 beyond. So we are, again, working with external partners to figure out how do we coordinate the planning? How do we make sure that the roads that are closed, the roads that we're trenching, that we're able to have simultaneous work that's being done to make sure you're building your community back more resiliently and faster. So Fernando, I'm sorry, I don't have necessarily completion timelines, but we are committed at SCE, once we've identified the scoping and the plans, to share that with LA County, to make that publicly available, and then to work on the particular timelines that we've demonstrated in our undergrounding plans to be as expeditious as possible. So some of the things that the state has done, including some of the permitting exemptions that they've kind of eliminated that red tape, has been helpful. Again, coordinating with other parties like Caltrans, particularly in our Malibu area, has facilitated the real building faster. So I do hope that answers some of the questions, Fernando, but please feel free to let me know if there's additional things you'd like me to clarify.
No, thank you so much, Lisa. It's very, very helpful. Thank you. That's very informative. I do just have a couple of follow-up questions, and I'll try to be brief. So there isn't, it sounds as if, and please know I'm new to this, and so I'm sort of the new kid on the block learning as I go, but I take it there is no agency directive, whether it's from CPUC, whether it's from Caltrans, whether it's from the county or any other agency that is directing your utility, SCE, to undertake this undergrounding program. This is something that SCE is doing voluntarily for all the reasons that you described?
Yes. Now, again, Rochelle had mentioned, again, some of the areas considered our high fire risk area. So again, in areas that are designated both by SCE and the CPUC, I think it's the high fire threat district, we are looking across our service area, how do we do the proper wildfire mitigation? That may be covered conductor, that may be targeted undergrounding. Both those tools, among the other things like vegetation management, allow us to be able to mitigate any ignition that is caused by utility equipment. So again, this is something that after the fires, we understood that we want to rebuild resiliently and faster. So we made a commitment to do the total undergrounding of 63 miles in Altadena and then 90 miles in the Malibu and surrounding neighborhood areas.
Well, that's terrific. I understand, but I haven't seen in all candor, Lisa, that the county is considering adopting an ordinance that would regulate underground facilities. I don't know what its terms are. Again, this is what I'm hearing. I'm learning secondhand. Are you aware of any proposed ordinance that would seek to regulate undergrounding in this area, and perhaps other areas too of the county and unincorporated territories? And if so, as and when or whether or not you know the terms yet. Does SCE intend to or anticipate or assume that it would have to comply with the terms and conditions of that undergrounding ordinance?
Yeah, so maybe I'll take the first pass here, and then if any of my colleagues from LA County want to step in here, particularly because this is the undergrounding ordinance that would be issued by the county, so we would be complying with the county's ordinance. So yes, we are aware there has been some discussion about a particular undergrounding ordinance in LA County. And so we have been working with them to try to inform, again, what does that ordinance look like, including some of the proposed undergrounding. Where are you going to remove poles, for example, to make sure that the alignment of our plans and undergrounding will be facilitated? So Fernando, I believe we are aware. Do you want to share, again, we've been in some discussions, but I'll also welcome colleagues from LA counties to maybe complement my response here.
Right. Thank you so much, Lisa. I agree. I think that, obviously the undergrounding ordinance, we have not yet seen the language yet. So, I think it's a matter of we continue to work with the county and try to work in close collaboration and try to coordinate in undergrounding as much as possible. So when the ordinance is proposed, I'm sure that we'll have an opportunity to collaborate with the county, and we'll do everything we can to try to make it as smooth and seamless as of a process as possible.
Very good, very good. Just one or two more questions of SCE, and just to have a couple of the county. So SCE team, I appreciate that. I think it was Vanessa who was describing how an easement would be valued or appraised in terms of value, which is comparable sales, and that makes a ton of sense. Couple of questions, and perhaps should be directed to you, Vanessa. Normally, if for any reason, I mean, typically you have the power of condemnation, as all utilities in California do. And normally when a condemning authority is seeking to acquire or a property it's regulated by state law, and no need to get into that. I'm not an eminent domain lawyer, but it's from what I understand, the thing to be acquired, whether it's an easement, a fee interest, whatever the interest may be, has to be appraised at fair market value. And from what I understand, the owner or that has the interest that the utility seeks to acquire would also be entitled to have its property appraised by a separate appraisal. And normally it's the condemning authority that would have to pay for the cost of the owner's appraisal up to a cap, and I forget what the cap is now. So I was going to ask, is that a process that you anticipate undertaking with each homeowner to arrive at fair market value? And I'm assuming most, if not all owners would want, of course, would be interested in meeting their self-interest and yours to have that easement done. But is that the process, that appraisal process I just described, what the process that the SCE will employ? And if not, I'm just curious, what are the processes will be and why not?
So we are going to be, the first offer to the property owner will be based on the sales comparables that I mentioned earlier, where we would be providing somewhat of a desktop analysis of values that were taken prior fire, pre-fire and post-fire. And then we use sort of an average of that to propose an offer to the property owner. If we cannot agree, like you mentioned, the appraisal process would be part of the condemnation proceedings. So SCE is a privately owned company, so it does not have that requirement to reimburse the property owner for a certain amount for the independent appraisal. However, we would provide a third-party appraisal that the property owner would be able to review and have as part of that process. that would determine the value. So an independent appraisal cost would not be covered by SCE in that circumstance.
Okay, very good. And like I
Thank
said,
you.
I don't specialize in the area. But
Hate to interrupt, Fernando, but we'll probably come back to you. I just want to
sure,
see if
done.
Michael wants to chime in, and I really want to get to the audience questions, but I really appreciate your perspective.
No, thank you guys. I really want to let it go to the audience questions. I mean, where I've been is really listening to homeowners. I have an infrastructure development background, and so I was just trying to look through, understand what each property owner is going through, and trying to look through the lens of this of experience I've had in the past from development. So I think I would like to leave it to the homeowners, but I think what we'd like to come back to is the question of coordination. I think that there's been a few things mentioned about timing and coordination, and it does appear that there's not the level of coordination between all the different elements, whether it be the financing and the actual infrastructure construction, that you might see on a new project, for instance, a new large development project, that this is from an infrastructure standpoint. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'd like to leave it over to hear from the Q&A from the people who were affected.
I appreciate that, Michael. All right, so I'm going to give one final question from Pri, and then we're going to dive into all of the audience questions. This is a pretty direct run. I'm going to ask all the parties, would you be willing to commit clearly and in writing to protecting fire impacted residents from new rates, fees, or profit recovery tied to undergrounding, including through CPUC rate care filings, SCE funds, or county ordinances, so that this work is not used to generate return or shift costs onto survivors?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm happy to respond to that question, and that's a good one. Just wanted to share a few things. So according to our 2025 general rate case decision, the current rate case will provide funding for more than, as part of our wildfire mitigation funding, for more than 1,600 miles of covered conductor, as well as 212 miles of targeted undergrounding to protect our customers and communities from the wildfire risk and reduce the need for public safety power shutoffs. In terms of like the cost, and I know this question comes up as well, so I know it wasn't specifically asked, but I'll just address this as well. The cost for liability claims related to wildfire losses are not part of SCE's 2025 general rate case. For liability claims, SCE would access its wildfire self-insurance and the AB 1054 State Wildfire Fund. Any costs exceeding dollars from the wildfire fund may be recovered in rates if the CPUC determines those costs are reasonable and appropriate. Also of note, recent legislation, AB 254, specifically had prohibited electrical corporations from including in their equity base rate their share of $6 billion in fire risk mitigation capital expenditures. So hopefully that helps to address.
It does. I would like CPUC to chime in then in response to what you just said.
Hi, I'll go ahead and take that.
Thanks.
With regards to SCE wanting to do any recoveries, anything that they decide that they want to recover, they would have to file with the CPUC. And as they said, those costs would have to be approved by the commission. But before doing so, there would be plenty of opportunities for public comment to weigh in and decide whether or not, or to provide your opinions on whether or not what they're asking for is just and reasonable.
Thank you. How would we be aware of them filing to you? What triggers us to know that we can submit public comment?
All filings that are submitted through the CPUC are on our docket calendar on our website, and I'd be happy to share that link with you later.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Hope.
In the interim, any costs that are incurred by SCE, are they able, in the interim before it's determined whether those costs are justified in their filing to the CPUC, are those costs able to be passed along as increased rates, even temporarily, on ratepayers?
SCE's rates are approved by the CPUC and they're set for their current general rate case through the year 2028. So there wouldn't be any changes to rates, and they are required to charge customers the rates that are in their tariffs. They cannot waive from their tariffs without approval from the CPUC.
Okay, so I'm going to have Morgan start us off on questions from the audience, but let me let you know what's been going on. We've had an incredible team taking in your nearly 200 questions. They've been putting them in buckets. They've been reducing and combining so we don't have redundancy, and they've been identifying ones that were already answered. So if you don't hear your direct question put forward, know that that's the process it's gone through. Gratitude to those in the other room. It's a whole team putting them together, and we'll dive right in. Go ahead, Morgan.
Okay, so yep, this is a question from Q&A. The most threatening and destructive fires in our area originate in the foothills. Yet the proposed undergrounding of power lines does not address the source of our worst fires. Why is the recent fire used to rationalize and promote the undergrounding initiative? Why not include the transmission lines in this effort? I assume that would be directed at SCE.
Yeah, if I could call on Lisa to help with this question. Right now, we are doing extensive wildfire mitigation. If you look at our rebuilding map, there's extensive undergrounding in the higher fire risk areas as well. And currently, we do not, unfortunately, have plans to underground the transmission lines in this area.
Yeah, thanks, Rochelle. That's correct. We do not have plans to underground transmission. There's obviously different specifications for transmission towers, which again, we work with the PUC and specific divisions there to make sure we are monitoring the transmission, we are maintaining it, and as well including like some vegetation clearance. So again, we have operating manuals for our transmission, which again, we go to the CPUC to make sure that they're updated and in agreement with their review and approval.
I have a quick follow-up. So you, and I think Albert noted that there's the transmission lines, and then there's the 16K voltage lines, and then there's the lines that are delivered to customers after the transformers. So are the 16K lines also being undergrounded?
Yes, the 16,000 volt lines are actually part of our distribution system, so they are being undergrounded, and that's so the 16,000 volt lines go to the transformers, and then from the transformers they get reduced to 120/240 volts, and then that's what feeds your from the transformer to your home, and all homes run off of 120/240 volt.
Okay, so can we assume then that the lines that are running, like, let's say up Lake, because that's kind of the main thoroughfare, are those lines also being undergrounded?
I would have to look at the specific plan for those specific lines, but those lines are 16,000 volt lines, so they can be undergrounded. I don't know that they are on the plan or not, but they are 16,000 volt lines.
Okay. All right. I do have a follow-up question, but I'm going to guess that one of our smart audience is going to ask the same thing about the towers. So I'll let that be for now. When a community finds an electric utility undergrounding plan is unaffordable, are there any remedies or actions the community can take to alter or stop the plan? I'm not even sure who to direct that to, but I'd love to know an answer.
I'll just speak on behalf of Edison. We can certainly take that feedback from the community if there's a strong desire to not underground. So far, we've had some feedback along those lines, but we're happy to take it back and try to address it. I think, our plans are to underground in this area, the 63 miles that we committed to, and want to remain committed to that as well, in the interest of the community. So happy to take that feedback. Not sure if there's anything else, unfortunately, I can offer just right at this moment, but we can definitely get back to you.
It feels like we might have covered a bit when we talk about ROEs, and that might be a device that could start that conversation. But thank you for that. Go ahead, Morgan.
So For homeowners who complete their rebuild before the street is scheduled for undergrounding, how will electric service be provided in the interim? And I'm also gonna just ask these other questions as well, because I think they're relevant. So can you please explain how will the undergrounding project affect our home rebuild? And what happens if our home is completed with overhead before undergrounding is complete? Will SCE handle the conversion, or will we, the homeowner, be responsible for the cost?
I think I could take this question, and if I miss any part of it, please let me know. So I think the first part was what happens if the home or the rebuild is completed before the undergrounding is completed in the area. So we will feed you with either from a nearby overhead distribution system or a generator. So if your home is completed, you will have power from one of those two methods, from one of the three methods, right? If our undergrounding is completed, you'll get it from the undergrounding. If the undergrounding is not completed and it's an undergrounding area, then we'll try to feed you from a nearby overhead source. If an overhead nearby source is not available or a feasible solution, then we'll install a generator to feed you.
And then follow up. So, like as you guys know, the area where I live and my neighbors are, that area is all private streets. So assuming that if we were to take the hypothetical where one of like myself or my neighbors completed our rebuild before your undergrounding is installed, is there any instance in which we would be in jeopardy of being completely done with our rebuild, done with our homes, but not being able to get a certificate of occupancy to actually occupy the building because there's no electrical or no permanent electrical being supplied?
I think that would be a question. I don't know if the our county partners can help me with that. As far as Edison, we will provide you a source, but I don't know if that impedes your permanent occupancy permit or not.
Great, that's a great question that I haven't heard posed with the generator option, but my understanding was again that properties would be served overhead, and that's why we'd have that adaptable panel that could be served overhead now and underground now and overhead in the future. But I'll certainly look into that if it's a generator, what that would mean at the end of your construction. So I'll get back to the group on that, Nick.
Thank you. I'll go with the next one. If our street or area is currently not scheduled to be included in the TUG plan, how do we get our street included in undergrounding plans?
You can feel free to have folks reach out to the contact information that we shared in the chat as well, and feel free to provide us feedback with that information, and we'll try to collect as many comments and feedback from the community as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, and this one involves the trenching of other utilities. So how will other utilities underground? Do we assume in the same trench as SCE?
So can you repeat that question, Morgan?
Yes. How will other utilities, and I think this person is referring to the telecoms, how will other utilities underground? Do we assume in the same trench as SCE?
So I can take this question. I think I got dropped, but I think I'm back. Hopefully you can hear me. So we share our undergrounding plans with all the other utilities that are on the pole, such as cable and internet, to give them the opportunity to coordinate. However, they're independent, so we can't speak for their specific plans. You would need to contact them directly in order to determine what their specific plans are for those areas.
Maybe this is a question for the county then. Does the county, I know in this proposed undergrounding ordinance, we're not sure whether that's a comprehensive ordinance. So would the county be compelling other utilities to either share a trench or do a trench alongside SCE or otherwise like get the other utilities undergrounded with SCE?
Great, and I'll take that. I appreciate the opportunity. I do want to say I'm Kira Barnett with Public Works, having camera issues tonight for those that can't see me. But like mentioned, an ordinance is proposed related to utility undergrounding, and it is still being vetted, so I don't have the details to share on that just yet.
Okay, gotcha. Will there be less or more noise coming through power, BC, et cetera, with undergrounding? So do the transformers have any fans or any other buzzing noise at all? Will the transformer vibrate?
The transformers do not have any fans. They're not designed with fans, and they should not make any noise.
Okay.
Okay. I think this one's from an engineer. Covered conductor provides the same protection as undergrounding. 0 fires with 6,400 circuit miles from 2019 to present. The cost is less than $400,000 versus $3.8 million per circuit mile. How does undergrounding make sense in the non-high fire threat districts? Albert, I'm going to toss that one to you.
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Sure. Covered conductor provides the same protection as undergrounding. 0 fires with 64 circuit miles from 2019 to present. The cost is less than $400,000 versus $3.8 million per circuit mile. How does undergrounding make sense in the non-high fire threat districts?
Well, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Rochelle.
I was just going to say, targeted undergrounding, I think there might be, I have heard this question before, and I think there is a little bit of confusion just like based on some of the data because at Southern California Edison, we have not done, a lot of undergrounding in our service areas. So I think maybe sometimes the statistics look a little odd, like that there isn't any net benefit in terms of wildfire mitigation. There is is an enhanced wildfire mitigation with undergrounding that we found, in our distribution system. And there are, less areas of exposure where I'll ask actually Al to like kind of chime in terms of like how some of the circuitry is a bit more exposed on the covered conductor overhead. It still is, like as the commenter said, a very strong and one reason why we have done so much covered conductor in our Southern California service area is because it has been really effective at wildfire mitigation, and undergrounding is just an enhanced version of wildfire mitigation as well. So maybe Al, if you wouldn't mind chiming in terms of like what you see out in the field and the exposures we see.
Yeah, so exactly what you said, Rochelle. The covered conductor is great and it is really effective. However, covered conductor is still exposed to the elements, right? For example, if it's high winds, you could still be experiencing a PSPS. Lightning, our system is still exposed to lightning if lightning storms come through the area. In addition, it still requires us to go through the neighborhood and trim the trees. The trees get the same amount of trimming as they do when it's conventional overhead wire. So those are some of the additional benefits that underground provides versus the covered conductor.
Thank you. I'm going to back up a bit. This is a pretty fundamental question, but I'm sure it's something people would like a really direct answer on. It's to county and CPUC. It's a dual question. Why are residents taking on the expense of undergrounding potentially? Why is the CPUC allowing SCE to pass all these costs to fire victims versus making SCE pick up the bill?
All right, I guess I'll take this one. I wouldn't say that the CPUC is passing on these costs. The costs that are being borne right now are coming out of SCE's general rate case. If there are fire losses that SCE wants to recover, that's when they're going to have to file with the CPUC to recover those costs. So right now, what they're using is the costs for undergrounding that were put into their general rate case that was just recently approved. SCE might want to expand on that.
Thank you, Hope. SCE?
That's correct. Thanks, Hope. So again, we are approved in our latest general rate case for targeted undergrounding, and I do want to maybe elaborate a little bit more or augment what Rochelle and Al put in. Particularly, we do targeted undergrounding. We understand, in particular in Altadena, this gave us a unique situation, right? We've talked about how this is likened to a new development or a greenfield. We had several homes destroyed. We had our own infrastructure destroyed. It gives us an opportunity to build back more resiliently. Again, it will be a combination of targeted underground and covered conductor. Again, those two mitigations do reduce the risk of an ignition, especially in high fire threat district, high fire risk areas. And so, again, in our general rate case, we did get approved for approximately 212 miles of targeted undergrounding. We are looking at what portion of that funding will apply to the Altadena rebuild area. Again, as Hope mentioned, if we do seek recovery, we will be filing that with the PUC. And again, there will be a filing, there'll be public comment, there'll be opportunity for us, even SCE, to share with the public that we have filed for that. Again, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm going to ask more of an alignment question. So how do we influence where handholds go to ensure that they don't go where we want driveways?
Yeah, so if that is the case, we will definitely work with the homeowners. The last thing we want to do is put a handhole where your driveway is going to go. In addition to that, we are also working with homeowners. If, for example, we design the stub out to be on the north side of the property, however, the homeowner intends to put the panel on the south side of the property, we are definitely working with homeowners, as Morgan, as you saw when we went out to your neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think it would be great to clarify for people. So because you're not working, this isn't a development and every homeowner is designing their own home. I think it'd be great to clarify how homeowners make sure that their design and your design for your undergrounding aligns and what the process is to maybe go to you guys to seek that alignment.
Definitely. So the sooner we can align, the better, because we're actively starting a lot of these projects, and we definitely want to have these changes in before we start digging and installing infrastructure. The best way to connect with us is to either go on our site and submit your request for service. You can submit that with a preliminary design. You can also visit the one-stop center where we do have Edison planners there, and the Edison planners are able to intake the information and might be able to look it up real time. If they're not able to look it up real time, they'll take your information down and get with the design team for the underground and get you an answer back as soon as possible.
And then just to follow up, if there is a circumstance where you complete your underground work before someone has their design completed and they realize that the sweep that you've put into their property might be on the wrong side of their property, what's the way to remedy that?
Al, I will let you answer that question, but I just did want to provide some context for folks because I know this is a little bit of an ongoing process here. So in the presentation, you may recall that we shared a pretty broad map. Not all those areas have been designed in detail yet because obviously we're working in a stepwise approach. So one of the ways that we're trying to provide communication to homeowners or property owners of where we're going to be undergrounding and what the potential impacts could be for your property is that we're sending out communications in the form of letters and emails. Please, if you can, update your contact preferences to SCE.com in your account. and we'd really like to be able to provide you with updates as we go along. We're also updating our website and posting on social media. If there is an ROE or easement question, we'll be reaching out to you. Just kind of get that question a lot, and just want to let you know that we are going to be making proactive attempts to communicate with you. But with that, I'll allow Al to go back and go in more detail with that question specifically, but just wanted to provide that clarification.
Yeah, so we do ask that we get approached as early as possible, because once the construction is done, it is very difficult to have to retrench, redig up the street to move that. So if you do see us in your area, in your neighborhood, and we have not made contact yet, please approach us so that we are able to coordinate and make sure that we are in alignment. Like I said, the sooner the better.
Great, thank you. This is a question from a resident. I am on the front end of a flag lot. The original overhead line for the property behind me ran past my property, connecting to a pole on his property. I assume the trench to my property will need to be extended to the property behind me. Who typically pays for that? Do I need to negotiate with my neighbor, or can someone help coordinate this?
So if I understand the question correctly, this particular person, their home is located behind somebody else's home. It's a flag lot.
They're in front.
Oh, they're in front. Okay, so it's address specific. So on that type of question, I would ask that they email me directly. That way I can help them help answer the question better. So it depends on, there's a lot of variables, but I'd be more than happy to help them.
Can you drop your, if you can drop us your email address, that'd be great. We'll share it with the group.
Okay, next question would be, so what about the 19 miles still being approved? How will we know if we will be undergrounded in future plans?
Yes, as soon as we get additional information, we will absolutely look for opportunities to share that out, specifically with groups like Altagether and ACONA, as well as our website. We'll absolutely be pushing out updates as soon as it becomes available. So thanks for the question. We're going to keep coming and keep providing information and updates as it becomes available.
I have two questions that are similar but different enough that we've kept them apart. I'll ask it the first way. We have already discussed with contractors and SCE as part of our burned panel replacement, and the quotes for connecting our house have been between 20 to 30K. SCE has told us this is our responsibility to pay. How are we supposed to pay for this? Insurance will not cover this, as not considered a code upgrade per my adjuster.
So this is Alicia Ramos with LA County Public Works. Let me speak to that in some context relative to the grant. So as I said earlier, we are currently right now doing some cost estimating based on more of a, existing condition, right? So I think the price that you're being quoted there is very specific to that lot. We've been looking at different quadrants of Altadena, and I'm sure residents of Altadena know how varied the range of lots can be in Altadena. In the more southern quadrants, we have more typical lots. They seem to replicate very consistently, but we have lots that can range anywhere from 4,000 to 10,000. Other quadrants, we have larger lots that are more in the average of 15, 16,000. Then of course, around the foothills, we have very unique lots. So your particular condition, I can't say that we're speaking to that, but we are looking at the varied range of lots in Altadena when we come to our estimate that we will be predicating our large ask number on. So with that said, we don't have the cost estimate yet for the exercise we're going through, but we do expect that it will be higher than the 8,000 to 10,000 that was quoted earlier. So again, this is going to be a rebate program. So we would come up with what we feel is a representative cost based off the range. That rebate is then going to be predicated on to the amount of. So you'd have to substantiate the documentation. You'd have to bring that, do it in accordance with the workshops we'll be providing so that your documentation is compliant. And if your cost is, let's say, 10, 11,000, you have a lot that might be on the smaller side. And if the up to amount, let's just say, I'm just taking numbers because we have not officially decided on this yet with the cost estimates still being out. But let's say it's up to 18,000. You would be rebated the cost that you experienced. If you have a uniquely larger lot that is somewhere in the range of, let's say, 22, 25,000, and the up to limit has been established at 18, there just are some unique conditions that we can't account for and say that that's the average that every lot would experience. So I just want to recognize some of the realities of the range of lot differences we've seen in Altadena, and I'm sure you're aware of.
Thank you, Alicia. I'll kind of truncate the next question, which was on the same topic. And I think I understand it, but if you can just clarify, if that cost also incurs like removing a driveway, because many of the standing homes and even homes that were burned still have driveways that might be usable, but if they have to dig that up and replace it, that cost can be covered by the grant as well?
That's what our cost estimating is being based on now. We are looking at the conditions of a complete install, which means the trenching, the conduit, which would be necessary in any situation, but we are looking at more practical conditions that are going to be encountered, which is you'll be pulling up existing hardscape. So yeah, we're including that in the cost estimates. That will be part of the narrative that we submit with the application. And again, hopefully awarded off those conditions. We want to represent a very realistic situation.
And we keep talking about we're hoping to be rewarded. Is there anything we as the public or the town council or organizations in Altadena that can do to help push forward, that can testify, that can appeal, is there anything to be done that can help you push that forward?
That's a great question, Nick, and I will explore that with Cal OES. Sometimes letters of support from organizations, larger community entities, certainly can't hurt the process. But let me check with Cal OES. I will take that question back to them to see in what form we might suggest supportive community opinion. So yeah, let me bring that back to them. I think it's a great question, Nick.
Appreciate it. Okay.
All right. So I am going to ask this. SCE said they need 100% participation to complete the project. Can we have clarity on what this means? All the owners of one particular property, one whole particular block, or one large area?
I think that was I was just gonna
yeah. So that would be an area where we're requesting ROEs from. So if it then, and that could be all the situations mentioned that you just mentioned. It could be a block. It could be half of a block. Maybe there's a portion that's private street, another portion that is public. So and again, it's all dependent on design, but we would hope to get 100% participation from the private properties that are impacted as far as getting easement rights or ROEs.
Okay, thank you. And then here's another question. Can we refuse to connect to Edison if we have enough solar panels and battery backup for our home? Very Altadena question.
Yes. Does CPUC or our county want to chime in on that? Or not want to chime in, but will anyone?
Yeah, this is Rochelle, and I apologize. I don't think I have that answer available right now, but I can be sure to come back with an answer on that as well.
Okay, I would ask our team giving us these questions, if you can save that answer for us, it'd be great to follow up. All right, to be clear, fire survivors who accomplish rebuilding prior to late 2026, those property owners would not be eligible for reimbursement for costs expended to trench for undergrounding. I think I know the answer to that. Let's start with that.
Yeah, and let me make sure I understood that because I'm going to have to drop off
I think
soon.
it's a rebate program, so I think the answer is laid in. Their question is, fire survivors who accomplish rebuilding prior to late 2026, those property owners would not be eligible for reimbursement for costs expended to trench for undergrounding?
Correct. So again, that's the criteria we've been given through the Cal OES FEMA discussions, is that if the work occurs prior to award, then it is not eligible. Now, I think there's some strategic things to consider, and this is only something that each individual homeowner can really consider with their designers and their contractors. Does that mean that you connect with the overhead still? And then later, when let's assume that the grant is awarded, could you then do your underground so then it's covered? That's a question that I need to take back to Cal OES so they can vet that with FEMA and see, would that be eligible? Or would they see it as, once you connect, you connect? So these are things that unfortunately the county is not making decisions on. This is in communication with Cal OES and FEMA to make sure that we're giving you the most accurate information that we understand at this point. So what we understand at this point is if it's constructed prior to award, it is not eligible. Are there other ways to strategize this? That's what we want to take back to Cal OES and FEMA and see if we can get more clarity. And do you just postpone, right? For some folks who are along the earlier routes of the SCE undergrounding, it's a question that you're going to get to sooner than others. Other routes, other lines that are going to come in 2-3 years later, we don't know necessarily who's going to be impacted at what year. Let me say that if the grant is awarded, services will be covered for 4 years. So let's assume we get the award in late 2026, then that would go for 4 years.
Thank you, Alicia.
Kira Barnett, also with the county. So on the permitting side, then I would say, advisable to talk to your contractor about the sequencing of construction, right? And maybe do that work, later in the project to see again if that money is secured. And again, if it's worth, postponing that work, as Alicia mentioned. So something to consider.
Thank you. I mean, it's just hard for me to hear that answer, and I appreciate it because you're being direct and you're being honest. But I guess it's baffling to me that a town that's eager to come back and be back home, there's just no process possible that somebody can get back home and not know that in retrospect that they can be part of this grant. They're currently, I hear what you're saying, Alicia, that you're working out some of the logistics, but I guess I'm just shocked. So somebody can finish building because they can't afford to pay a rent. I mean, I could go deep into this, but
absolutely, yeah. I mean, it is absolutely part of the, I think, impractical application and reality that just suggests why wouldn't it be covered, and that's where I think we need to explore further with Cal OES and FEMA. But that is the information we've been given to date. I think something else to consider, though, is to really look at your timeline. As was mentioned earlier, to go through the right of entry process, to go through the easement, there is time built in there as well. So I think really trying to coordinate what your specific situation is, and that is still an effort to coordinate with us, to coordinate with Building and Safety Review, to coordinate with SCE. I am not for a moment saying that there isn't a heavy lift in just getting a schedule together. But that's where we need to become more informed to just say, what is your unique situation? And to see, is that something that you're going to be facing? But it is a reality. We acknowledge it is a reality that quite a number of homes, for building faster, getting back home quicker, which is what we all want to do, that there is right now an inherent risk that you may miss this funding opportunity. Just acknowledging.
Is that dictated by FEMA?
That is regulated by FEMA, right? That the application would go to FEMA, and what we're understanding is until there's an award, those things become ineligible. There are certain things that can be eligible, which is considered pre-work, which would be design. So if you did something to design the line but did not actually do the construction work, that may be eligible. But I think realistically, we all know that the biggest part of the expense is going to be construction.
Yeah. So, and I'll let it go because I know you can feel it with me, Alicia, but you can see the emojis. If there's anything at this point you walk away from this with, it would be, let's figure that out, because that seems just, again, just baffling. And you don't have an answer and you're following FEMA rules, but boy, whatever we can do to figure out to get people back and not be screwed over, that then they can't be part of this, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Follow up for Alicia. So can you just remind us what the timeline is for that FEMA money to be approved?
Yes. So we anticipate, so what happens is once we submit the application, then Cal OES does their part to that application and they submit it to FEMA. Their expectation is to submit it to FEMA in 2026, early 2026. and then FEMA will take time with it. Now, that's the big variable. We all understand that this is high priority and it's to be expedited. What that means on different levels of government, which means Cal OES as well as FEMA, what we've been told is that to go through that process, don't anticipate that the award would come any sooner than late 2026. Hopefully, we see something more expedited, but we can't speak to the partners that we don't necessarily have influence with. But that's what we've been told, end of 2026.
Thank you for making that clear for us, Alicia. I do appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Let's hope the government gets back to work pretty soon.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, we won't go there. So I'm gonna ask, let's see. I think I had a related question. I'm trying to find it here. One second. So, okay, please clarify what happens if a homeowner refuses to do trenching. I don't mean how it affects the entire project, but how does that homeowner get power?
And I'm so sorry. I promised to go off of it, but there was an end to that question I just asked. So Morgan, if we
Sure,
can
we
hold
can
on to
say
that for just a second. Alicia, just for clarification, are we talking about physical construction of the connection or permit application? I assume you're talking about completed physical construction.
Physical completed construction. So if
Okay.
you want to be eligible for that, just based off what we know today, you would want to hold off on actual construction until the grant is awarded. And again, referencing the late 2026 timeline we've been given.
And that's completion, not you can be constructing, it's just completion.
It's construction of what you want to cover. So for instance, if you've started that construction, I'm just going to take arbitrary months here. Let's say you've started that construction in September 2026, but the grant isn't awarded until November. What you've expended prior to the grant award in November would not be eligible. It would be from the point of the award forward. So again, this is something that is a strategic nature that you want to give thought to.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Morgan. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, so please clarify what happens if a homeowner refuses to do trenching. I don't mean how it affects the entire project, but how does that homeowner get power? I think Albert could probably address that.
So if we're referring to like a home that's still standing, in the interim, what we would do is we would set a pole, a service pole, like I talked about earlier, a 25 to 35 foot pole. And then we would rise up from the underground distribution system and feed that home overhead as it currently is being fed right now.
So does that apply to new construction as well? Let's say like someone was doing new construction, for whatever reason they did not want to trench. Will you provide a pole for that person as well?
Yeah, every situation is unique, so we would take a look at those situations on an individual basis.
Okay.
Great. I think this was covered, but out of respect, I'll repeat it. How will the county advocate for other avenues to pay for this other than this grant? This is a clear need by the community.
Great. This is Kira Barnett with LA County Public Works again. And if the county is unsuccessful in obtaining the grant award, and then the undergrounding connection process would proceed as it typically does, where the cost would be borne by the individual homeowners if they chose to make the underground connections. Or I understand, and Edison could confirm that homeowners who opt out to make the underground connections would be provided overhead connection by a vertical pole on their property.
Thank you, Kira. I see Alicia had to leave, and if she hasn't gone yet, I do want to just point out, I know you're just giving facts as they are given to you and you as well, Kira, and others. So I appreciate you being here and sharing the information. Sometimes it's hard to share answers we don't want to hear, and I wanted to make sure we knew that Alicia is not making that decision. She's simply sharing the information in front of her. So it's great to know our passion toward changing that.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
This question again pertains to private property. So this is just another clarifying question about what exactly happens when you don't get 100% participation. And I think probably what we could do is provide clarity on the process of condemnation and how SCE would deal with having to take an easement in order to complete their project.
Yeah, that's correct, Margaret. So I think, again, we try to work with property owners to best negotiate the right of entry and the easement. If there are cases where we need to pursue condemnation or eminent domain, we don't take that lightly. We will make multiple efforts to work with the resident and the property owner to get to some resolution. But we can come back to the group here with some more definitive steps on what that might entail. But that will include, again, notifying the resident and property owner that we are looking to take those specific necessary steps. But we'll try to do everything we can to do a negotiation on the right of entry and easement. Again, we understand that it's a lengthy process for both us and for the property owner. So we don't like to use that as the main tool for us to be able to secure those easements and right of entries. Again, it does potentially delay some of the project depending on the design. We are not able to completely redesign. We've taken every effort. As Vanessa mentioned, there are some exceptions, but again, we can come back to you with a little bit more detail on what would be the next steps and what can property owners can expect to hear from us, what type of information they need as we continue the negotiation there.
All right. If our insurance companies do not cover undergrounding costs and the rebate or grant is unavailable, will SCE cover the undergrounding as part of its settlement to make us whole and restore what was damaged?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're currently still in the process of developing the direct claims reimbursement program. So that will be something that we will be addressing and asking that question. We'll be able to provide an answer to that as the program launches.
Thank you, Rochelle. And I recognize we won't have all our answers tonight, but I appreciate you hearing that and hearing it loudly, and I know you're making note that these are the concerns on our minds.
100%. Absolutely.
Nick, if I could, LA County Public Works again, Kira Barnett. Another thing to keep in mind, a stipulation of the rebate program would be that if you are an insured homeowner and your policy allows for cost coverage to connect by underground, then you wouldn't be eligible for the grant rebate. So it would be prudent to inquire with your insurance carrier if there is a stipulation that your covered power connection costs may be any method, underground or overhead. If your insurance carrier held you to an in-kind connection, meaning like for like, if you were overhead before the fire and they would only pay you enough to cover overhead again, then you may qualify for the grant assistance since you'd be connecting underground and not covered by your insurance policy.
Thank you, Kara.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'll just jump in here because we were talking about the wildfire claim. Just to mention that if there are costs that are incurred to homeowners that are not included in your insurance, another source of gap funding, if you're not participating in the wildfire claim, is your personal claim against SCE. So I would advise everyone, if they are involved in a claim, to talk to their attorneys about that possibility as well. So you could recoup some costs through that personal claim. So talk to your attorneys.
Could I interject again real quick? I'm sorry, Morgan. Just wanted to share with everybody, we are hosting a Rebuilding Together workshop this Saturday, 10:25 from 10 to 12. I'll make sure and put that in the chat so you can share it out. But it is a Rebuilding Together workshop on addressing the funding gap. So we'll have some key players, some subject matter experts there, including LACDA and others to talk about addressing the funding gap. So I'll make sure again and share that, but it's on our recovery.lacounty.gov rebuilding site under workshops. And it will be a recorded session that'll be posted online after about a week after Saturday.
Thank you, Kara. Can you clarify which funding gap you're talking about?
Just in that, some people have insurance, some people don't have insurance. If you're underinsured, you know how much your construction might cost. It's how to assess and address that gap between maybe insurance that you do have and your cost of construction. So just looking at different ways to try and meet that gap.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be sure to include that in our block captain newsletter too that goes out. My turn to ask a question? Okay. So this one's kind of a long one. So do the manholes or stub outs contain any precious materials or metals? If so, what is the security approach to preventing theft of those materials? In the neighborhood in which we are now renting does have precious materials under those manholes, and nearly all blocks are currently without streetlights as a result of widespread theft. Can we assume there have been upgrades to materials or security that will be used in Altadena since this other neighborhood was undergrounded?
So I think I could take that question. So the conduit itself, I think that was part of the question, right? The conduit and the handhold itself. The conduit is made out of PVC. The handhold, depending on which type of handhold it is, it's either made out of fiberglass or concrete. All of our structures are secured as best as we can secure them. And inside of those structures, we use aluminum cable. Typically, what gets stolen is the copper cable, and we don't have that inside of those structures.
Okay, thank you. We're going to do 2 more questions. We're coming up on 8 o'clock or more if we can get through them quickly. We are at the end stage of our build and close to requesting certificate of occupancy. Will Edison release a copy of the plan so my builder can set up the connection points at our property line? We are in a zone that was completely devastated and there are only temporary power poles. Those plans are currently still being changed, correct? So they're on the site currently?
So the best answer for that, again, that's kind of a hard answer to give you a direct answer on because it varies from site to site. What I would say is contact the go to the one-stop shop, the one-stop center, and our planners can help provide you an answer specific to that property.
Great, and that was on their slide deck. We'll provide that again. I think it's 454 Woodbury or somewhere near there. Is it better to have the conduit run underneath a driveway, or is it better to run it under a pervious area?
So our conduit is typically between 24 inches and 30 inches underground, and it can be under concrete, it could be under a roadway, it could be under a green belt. So it can function on all the different scenarios.
Thank you, Morgan.
Okay, I think this question is best addressed to the CPUC. Any comments to the governor's last-minute utility legislation that appears to benefit the utilities to the detriment of the users, formerly known as SB 254? LA Times has referred to it as a bailout.
I apologize. I'm not familiar with the details of that, so I can't speak to it.
Okay.
You want to do the Supervisor Barger?
Sure. So Supervisor Barger has mentioned the one trench model for undergrounding the utilities. How is the county coordinating with all other utilities?
Kira Barnett again from LA County. That would be that ordinance that's proposed related to utility undergrounding. And as I mentioned, it's still being vetted, so I don't have the details to share tonight.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up on that, Morgan?
Yes, absolutely.
I guess just the question is why isn't that being ordinance coordinated with the undergrounding that SCE is doing?
From what I understand, that is what it'll look to address. But like I said, I don't have any details on which way the ordinance.
Well, I guess what I mean is, why are you moving ahead before an ordinance that's going to coordinate infrastructure undergrounding, and you're doing undergrounding?
Got it. So a question to Edison, is it?
Yep.
I mean, I don't think we can speak for the county per se and the ordinance, but what I can say is that I do know that we have been working closely with the county as they develop the ordinance, specifically to help to enhance collaboration, cooperation amongst utilities for the undergrounding piece. One of the things that I also know is there are some areas within Altadena that have not been restored to service. And so those areas where there currently isn't service provided, we're trying to move ahead as quickly as possible to be able to provide service to those customers who don't yet have it. And in that regards, we're also trying to, provide that expedited undergrounding service so that it's, ready and available when those customers are ready and ready to rebuild.
Thank you, Rochelle. I'll do one last question. It's an easy one. Is the cost double for 2 units on a property? Is it per panel, such as a single family residence and an ADU?
What I can say is I think the cost that we outlined, that 8 to 10,000, that was really based on, as I mentioned, the 35 feet of 3-inch conduit trenching. Primarily the primary costs, as far as I'm aware, are for the trenching costs. So perhaps, Al, if I missed anything, if you feel like there might be anything that would be a larger cost than that to account for.
Yeah, so just to make sure I got the question right, they're asking if we add an ADU, or if there's an ADU in addition to the regular home on the property, is there additional cost, right?
Right.
So again, every situation's different. However, there are things that you can do to avoid double the cost. For example, if you do a dual gang panel, which is a panel that's got 2 meters on it, so you just trench once to that panel. That panel has both meters. 1 meter would be used to serve your main residence. The second meter would be used to feed your ADU. So that way it would just be 1 conduit, 1 trench.
Thank you. That is our final question. Thank you for your patience. It's 8:02. I want to thank all our panelists for coming. I want to definitely thank my partners with Altagether and the amazing team in the other room going through all the questions. And to those watching, I really appreciate you taking the time and educating yourself and getting this clarity. I hope you spread the word of what you've learned tonight. Let people know this recording is available. We appreciate you and your commitment to build back our community and make sure our voices continue to be heard. And we appreciate your patience if we didn't get to your question. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, neighbors.